It goes without saying that the heroes and villains of Disney movies aren't what we would call a match made in heaven. They are both directly opposed to the other, so why would they ever be friends with one another? Even the Disney heroes who do befriend their villains only do so either before they reveal their true colors or after they've turned a new leaf. While it's very unlikely that the hero and villain of a singular Disney movie would ever become friends in their existing forms, what would happen if we mixed heroes and villains from completely different films? Surely a few of them would become friends in that case. Some of these relationships would bring out a positive side to the villain, others a negative side in the hero. But no matter their differences, one thing is for sure: these heroes and villains were destined to be BFFs. I'm Caleb with Wicked Binge, and this is Which Disney Heroes and Villains Would Be BFFs? First up on the list is one that might sound like a weird pairing, but will make sense the more you think about it. It's Jim Hawkins from Treasure Planet and Captain Hook from Peter Pan. So why would these two vastly different characters ever become friends? You have Jim, who hates most authority figures, and Hook isn't exactly fond of the youth. Despite their differences, both characters are pirates who love the smell of adventure. The two would likely not start out as good friends, but this feeling could bring the both of them together. We also believe the two could bring out the best in each other. Jim and Hook's relationship could mirror Jim's own relationship with John Silver, the villain of Treasure Planet. By interacting with Hawkins, Hook could become a gentler and kinder soul. In turn, Jim would also mature, much like he did after Silver began mentoring him in the film. Perhaps Captain Hook would even turn a new leaf and leave his evil-doing ways in the past for greener pastures. At the absolute bare minimum, he probably wouldn't hate Peter Pan and the Neverland Pirates as much. The two also have a shared element of vulnerability that could further bring them together. Hook might be arrogant, but he gets emotional and upset at times, a trait that's not typically seen in Disney villains. Jim acts rebellious and reckless, but he craves companionship more than anything else. They might be at odds when they first meet, but they'd find out sooner or later that they have far more similarities than either would like to admit.
I'm gonna make sure that you never see one doubloon of my treasure.
As we said, it is a very odd matchup, but it makes more and more sense as you think about it. A teenager from outer space and a crotchety pirate doesn't sound like it has the potential for friendship, but as the Treasure Planet film taught us, anything is possible. Next up are two rulers who are vain in every sense of the word: Kuzco and the Evil Queen. Like Hook and Hawkins, this is a weird duo on surface level, but it does start to make sense when you really think about both characters and how they act. First off, both characters are obsessed with beauty. The Queen hates the idea that Snow White is the fairest of them all, and it would be a bit of an understatement to say that Kuzco isn't a big fan of the whole being turned into a llama thing.
My face, good. My beautiful, beautiful face.
This feeling extends to both characters' views of others too. Kuzco and the Queen look down on anyone who doesn't fit their superficial ideas of beauty. They see themselves as rulers supreme and rule over the respective lands with an iron fist. Kuzco might be a lot more adventurous and fun-loving than the Queen is, but that doesn't change the fact that he thinks more for himself rather than the people he rules. Speaking of which, while it is a pretty small similarity, we'll also point out that both don't exactly have a lot of respect for their underlings. Kuzco has one of his subordinates tossed out of the palace, and the less said about the skeleton in the Queen's dungeon, the better. So while neither one thinks much of anyone below them, they may very well take an interest in each other. Both would find some beauty in the other, or at least the potential of growing their kingdoms, and because they are so surface level, this alone would be enough to make them the best of friends. Sometimes in this world, all you really need need to cultivate a lively friendship is a dull worldview and plenty of power. Our third pairing of the day brings together two of the toughest guys in Disney history, Wreck-It Ralph and Gaston. Few in the Disney animated canon can measure up to the strength of these guys, and that is reason enough for them to become friends. Gaston would be shocked to see someone who could go toe-to-toe with him, so he'd most likely be the one to instigate the friendship. We see them as the kind of friends who would be always trying to get a one-up on the other. They'd have a friendly rivalry, trying to see who could eat the most eggs or lift the most objects. Ralph would return this favor by inviting Gaston to the vast catalog of arcade games and competing with him in them. You just know that Gaston is the type to never be happy with a game until he has the highest score. Beyond that, both characters are proud of who they are, albeit in different ways. Ralph knows he's the villain of his game, just as Gaston relishes his many accomplishments. Gaston could help Ralph open up a little and better express his feelings, not unlike the video game villains of Ralph's group therapy sessions. This would, in turn, make Ralph a more confident and easygoing person. On the other hand, it could potentially also make Ralph into Gaston 2.0. But we hardly think Gaston would find any problem with that.
I'm not interested in anything you have to say.
When you need to make friends, many times you just need to find someone like you. And that's exactly what would make Gaston and Ralph BFFs. While we've been pretty jovial in this video in regards to these pairings, it's time we look at one that could easily go down a darker path. From Cinderella, we have Lady Tremaine, and from Tangled, we have Rapunzel. While these characters are intensely different, they both have something the other would be interested in, and that is what would ultimately bring them together to become friends. Rapunzel would be interested in a motherly or mentor-like figure, and Tremaine would be obsessed with finding someone who she could exploit. Thus, the two meet. Lady Tremaine, like Mother Gothel before her, would become infatuated with Rapunzel's hair and quickly find a way to use it to her advantage. But while Cinderella was somewhat timid and soft-spoken, Rapunzel is anything but. Her energy and liveliness would be at odds with Tremaine's sense of order, and this could bring out a better side to Tremaine, not unlike how we believe Jim Hawkins could turn Captain Hook into a better person. Rapunzel can bring out the best in anyone, and while Lady Tremaine is one of the darker Disney villains, we believe even she could grow as a person with some assistance from Rapunzel.
Yes, just an imaginative child.
On the flip side, however, there is the possibility that the opposite will happen. Lady Tremaine could turn Rapunzel's free-spirited personality into one that is completely dictated by her. We could see Rapunzel, who is not at all like Drizella or Anastasia, but has none of the shortcomings. This would be a horrible outcome for Rapunzel, but we cannot imagine a greater victory for Lady Tremaine than this. Either way, these two seem like they are destined to run into each other's crosshairs. Hopefully, the former outcome is the one that would actually happen, and not the latter. What happens when two warriors who existed in completely different eras meet? They become friends, of course, and the Disney canon has no greater warriors than Hercules and Clayton from Tarzan. Though they are from two different periods in time, we think this difference in lifestyle would be the backbone of their friendship. Hercules would be interested in hearing of Clayton's travels and expeditions, just as Clayton would be entranced by stories of how Hercules defeated the Hydra and other various monsters. Despite being from different periods of world history, both are fighters at the end of the day. That commonality will bring them together in a way most would not expect. The two could also share tips on how to conquer their foes, which would only make the other into better fighters. Like Gaston and Ralph from prior, we could see their friendship being not all that different from a friendly rivalry. They would fight in tournaments both with and against each other, or go on hunting trips in an attempt to see who gets the biggest kill. We could also see Clayton becoming something like a mentor to old Herc as well. Being that he does seem considerably older than Hercules, he could take him under his wing and slowly mold him into a more dangerous individual. This would be far from a good thing for Hercules and his friends, but Clayton would almost certainly profit off of it, and at the end of the day, that's all he cares about. While this friendship isn't one that's built to last, we think Hercules and Clayton would find at least a little bit of kinship in each other before things take a turn for the worst. And that's what matters most. But real quick, before we get to our last entry, if you're enjoying this video, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button and notification bell. We ask because we'd really appreciate the help getting to our next milestone, and we have lots more videos we'd love to share with you. Thanks so much. Last but certainly not least, every classic Disney villain needs an equally good sidekick. But what if the sidekick was a hero? Better yet, what if Stitch became the sidekick of Jafar from Aladdin? Jafar is always on the lookout for villainous or untrustworthy fellows who could be of use in advancing his goals. From Iago to Gazim to Aladdin himself for a time, Jafar has no shortage of valuable allies at his disposal. Stitch is a pretty rotten individual himself at first, and with his origins as an alien experiment gone awry, Stitch might prove to be a better henchman than any of the others Jafar has encountered. He's strong and nimble in a way none of Jafar's associates are, so he would surely see some potential in the little guy. The biggest problem in regards to Stitch is keeping him on a leash, but we doubt that would be much of a problem for Jafar. While other villains probably would have some issues dealing with him, Jafar can easily mind control Stitch via his staff, which would make Stitch an even more dangerous evil sidekick. Jafar is already one of the most cunning and evil villains in the Disney canon, so could you imagine if he had somebody as chaotic as Stitch on his side? The land of Agrabah would not have been as lucky in this scenario, but Jafar certainly would be. Jafar might not be as nice of a friend as Lilo was, but we figure that Jafar would give Stitch a modicum of respect.
There's a new order now. My order.
At the very least, he'd probably be treated better than Iago was. Stitch and Jafar seem to be about the farthest thing from a healthy friendship. But remember, we're only covering friendships in the general sense in this video. So, as toxic as this matchup may ultimately be, this dastardly duo still has everything you need to be best friends forever. But let us know in the comment section if you agree with our list, and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge more of our videos. But most importantly, stay wicked.